Hey everybody, this is Minion Soldier and this is Ship Updates. Now, this week of course we got a lot more details on the Eclipse and some information in regards to how that ship came into being with the segment on ATV, but we also had the Eclipse Q&A this week. Now the Q&A is pretty long, but there's some really important stuff in there in dealing with the Eclipse, and so I kind of wanted to go over some of that information. Now, of course, this is footage from ATV, and this is detailing sort of how the Eclipse came into being. Now, one of the questions in the Q&A was, what kind of missile systems can I put on it apart from torpedoes? Can I change it around? No, you can't. It's torpedoes and torpedoes only. That's it. Now, you can use those torpedoes against both ground targets and air targets, and air, of course, meaning space targets as well, but it can only carry torpedoes. Now, if you're wondering if you can remove the bomb bay and replace it with possibly a stealth cargo module, no, you cannot. It is a stealth bomber, and that's it. So that is the only application that this ship is meant to be used for. Now, of course, you can fly around and I guess use it as a bit of a personal transport, but once again, no cargo space. Now, they did show us the missile release system, and it is very similar to that of, say, like the cruise missile release system or launch system from a modern day bomber, using kind of a drum launcher to deploy torpedoes over a long distance. And that was kind of cool, but once again, it is just the 3 torpedoes, and you cannot replace that torpedo bay with anything else, or at least they said there are no plans to do so in the future. So once again, it's a torpedo bomber, and that's it. Now, they talked a bit about the maneuverability and the speed, and they pretty much pegged it as being more or less like a Gladiator in terms of maneuverability and speed. So not really a dogfighter. And even if you could, you're going to have a long time to lock on those torpedoes, and they're probably not going to be that good at chasing down fighters. It really is more of a danger to like larger cargo type ships, larger industrial vessels, because even something like an Idris is not going to be that threatened by something like this. Like, they were talking about it in the Q&A, and they were saying that if you had a couple of Eclipses attacking an Idris, even with its shields down, the impact of those torpedoes might be enough to disable or somewhat damage an Idris. So it's still going to take a heck of a lot of firepower to take an Idris out. So you're going to need a lot more than just 2 of these ships to do that. Now, speaking of the Idris as well, I'm sure some of you are asking, can you fit one in an Idris? Now, they didn't actually speak to the Idris itself, but they did say you cannot fit one on a Polaris, but you should be able to fit one on a Javelin. So obviously this is going to be a pretty wide and a pretty big ship, and that is kind of another constraint on the ship. Once again, this is a very focused ship on doing one thing, and there's not a lot of options around it. Now, of course, there were some questions about the torpedoes and just how big they are, and I was talking about it I believe last week, where I was saying are they size 9, like proper size 9, like one size below the Polaris? And yes, they are. So they are just one notch below what a Polaris carries, the same as what a Retaliator carries. Now, in terms of the overall stealth factor of the ship, once again, they don't really implicitly state anything other than they did take cross-section into account, but whether or not that's a dynamic factor to say, as the situation changes, as it evolves over time, different ships at different angles, could that affect the overall radar cross-section? Or is it simply a singular value attached to that hull. Let's say like a standard ship might have a hull signature value, a standard value of 1, and then this ship might have, say, a standard value of 0.5, you know, being half the signature of that ship. And you know, they do talk about managing ship systems, and that's something that we know that's in game. You can power systems down to lower your signature, or you can get different ship systems for different applications. And so you can, you know, in theory, lower that signature down further through gameplay and through skill, rather than just relying on an abject value assigned to you by the hull of the ship. So it adds a lot of interesting dimensions to it. Now, would I buy the ship? Now, I haven't bought it, and I pretty much, when I was watching this and when I was reading the Q&A, the Q&A kind of closed the door on this ship, but not because I was disappointed, not because I looked at it and I said, you know, oh no, this is terrible. What I took away from the Q&A is there was one portion of the Q&A that I wanted to kind of really delve in deeply to, because they were talking about the different grades of components that you can get for a ship. And there were 5 grades that they listed, and they were military, civilian, industrial, competition, and stealth. So overall, like when you're looking at the ship and they're talking about, say, gladiator style speed and maneuverability, it's still a carrier-based ship, so the range isn't going to be that great. When I looked at that, and then I saw all this different discussion, or like when I saw them talking about, you know, these different grades of components, well, stealth components, does that mean that there's a broader group of stealth components that are available to many different types of ship in the game? And you know, when you look at something like the Hornet and then the Hornet Ghost, that kind of points to the fact that there are going to be, at least for a large number of ships. Now, you might not be able to build a stealth Orion to go mining with in dangerous space and maybe stay hidden while you mine, though that would actually be an interesting idea. You know, to mine, you know, very high value minerals in dangerous space, maybe if you built a stealthed out mining ship, or as much as you really could. But what I was looking at is when it talked about those stealth components, well then, could I possibly attach or replace the components on, say, a Retaliator with stealth components? And even though the Retaliator might not be, strictly speaking, a stealth ship, could I, you know, through skill and through managing of the different components within the ship and purchasing special components, could I possibly add a stealth factor, or at least a stealth factor that is such that it would actually be worthwhile in using on the ship, that it would actually, you know, fulfill my needs? Would that not be possible with a Retaliator, which is a ship which does have bomb bays that you can remove and replace and add in cargo, or conceivably, you know, you can also carry troops with it? It raises a lot of interesting possibilities from that one point in the Q&A. You know, could I maybe trick out and stealth out a Cutlass, or, you know, a Freelancer, things like that. So in as much as in terms of overall stealth bombers, I don't think that CIG is going to release something that in that narrow application that eclipses the Eclipse. I think that when I look at the availability of ships going into the future and certain ships that are already in game, what I took away from the sale, and especially this Q&A, is I'm more interested in experimenting with these stealth components when they're available and seeing what I can do with the other ships in the universe. I mean, in as much as the Retaliator is a ship that I think needs some love overall, I still see a lot of potential there. And, you know, the Retaliator kind of certain models of it, especially that very base value model, come in a lot cheaper than than the Eclipse. So that you know, it raises some interesting questions about the future. And you know, given that we are moving into a patch now where we are going to be able to, you know, land on planets and do a lot of things, I don't really see myself needing a very narrow focus ship anytime soon. And realistically, chances are we probably are not going to be seeing this ship for quite some time. So my takeaway from all this, once again, was just that I'm more interested in the stealth system itself than the actual ship. Would I get one, say, in-game down the road when it's available in-game for in-game money? Yeah, probably. Absolutely. It looks like it's going to be a fantastic ship. But I think my interest at this point is kind of getting ships that are much more broad in their application, and not just kind of finding myself at a point where I'm kind of stuck in with a ship that only does one thing. Right now, my focus is more, of course, the Reclaimer and seeing what we can do on the surfaces of planets. And so, as cool as this ship is, as much as I love the idea, I'm not getting one. I'm more, you know, I'm more looking at it and saying, you know, that's going to be something that I'm going to get once it's in game and once I can buy it for in-game credits. It looks like a fantastic ship, absolutely. And if you know, if you're one person who's going to go out there and buy it, by all means, if that's your style of gameplay, if you're looking at it and you're saying that is exactly what I want out of the game, then more power to you. And there's nothing wrong with that. But for me and for where I'm at, I'm more interested in maybe trying to find a side route to getting to that ship using a different hull, and something that I can maybe use for other things in the future. So that's the show for this week. Of course, on the Piracy Show on Monday, I'll be dealing with questions, comments, and concerns from this video as usual. I hope you guys enjoyed it, and thanks for watching.
Quantum travel initiated.